Welcome to the How Marble Hill was Revived talk with Rachel Morrison, titled How Marble Hill was Revived, Community at the Heart. Tonight's talk, How Marble Hill was Revived, will be given by former Audience Development Manager Rachel Morrison. Those of you who have been part of the project, Rachel will require no introduction. However, Rachel joined English Heritage in December 2019, just before the global pandemic, and has seen the project through the highs and lows, and has been a key part in delivering the multi-million-pound project Marble Hill Revived. Drawing upon her varied and strong background and experiences in broadcasting management and event planning, this talk shall be focusing on her experience being the Audience Development Manager at English Heritage and how the community had been a part in the project.
Thank you so much, Liv, for that really, really kind welcome. And it is a real delight to be able to speak to you today. Community has been at the very heart of Marble Hill Revived. And it is great to be able to share about this and how community is such an important part of Marble Hill. It continues to be so, and how the project has enriched the life of the community, thanks to the help from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and of course, English Heritage as a charity too. So Marble Hill has been revived, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about that. Obviously, you know probably quite a lot about the women behind the house, but a little bit more about that. And then a bit more about how Marble Hill Revived has been an intrinsic part of the community, and how the community has been an intrinsic part of Marble Hill Revived. So we all know and love the 66-acre park within which is set this fantastic Georgian villa. And previous to the project, the house was hardly opened. The landscape needed investment. The cafe was a concession and so wasn't raising money for the charity. And there were some events, but actually we could do more. And I think it was, and I know actually, it was through some really hard work by English Heritage, being able to gather a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to be able to really invest in this amazing place, to ensure that it's safeguarded for future generations. And it has been a real privilege to be a part of the revitalisation and transformation of both the landscape and the house that has had people at the heart of it. Our volunteers have made such a huge impact, but also various different user groups who've been very important in Marble Hill's revival. But actually, it's all based around this phenomenal woman, HENRIETTA Howard. Previously, she may well have been tainted as that mistress of King George II, but actually she was so much more than that. And prior to the project, we had various different boards up at each of the entrance, which just said mistress to the King George II. But it's such a delight to be able to share that she was more than that. She was a fantastic woman who actually battled against quite a lot of odds, whether that be her deafness at age 30, whether that be the domestic abuse that she suffered at the hands of her first husband, or whether that be just being a woman in this time where, as we know, women had very little rights and were often seen as owned by their husband. But she was a strong woman. She was very shrewd, and it's been great to be able to talk about some of those more difficult parts of her history, to celebrate her disability, but also to use her story to inspire others. And it's been a real privilege to be part of that. So what was this Marble Hill Revived about? Well, I've talked about what it was like before, just a little bit, but we hope to conserve and re-present the house to make sure that it was open for 5 days a week, for 7 months of the year, and to make sure that more people could enjoy it, to open it up for free. We wanted to make sure that there were more parts of the park that could be open and new habitats created, creating this fantastic biodiversity through whether that be wildflower meadows or whether that be reinstating some of the historic spaces like the fantastic orchard. We wanted to improve the sports facilities, and that's been a key part of the work that I've been doing around the community. We've got fantastic sports teams, individuals, trainers who've been part of the story, but actually making sure that we had great facilities like tennis courts, all the pitches had proper drainage, has also been a really important part of our improvements, and safeguarding the sports facilities for the future. We want to refurbish that cafe, and actually now we've got a super load of staff there, a fantastic manager, and it is a space that can be used by some of our community groups now. As you have a cup of coffee, you know that you are giving back to the charity who's made such an important improvement within our space in Marble Hill. We were hoping to create a new little play area for children. As a local mum, I know how important it is for little ones to play, but also to play safely. And so that's part of what we wanted to do. But we also wanted to deliver some apprenticeships to give back that opportunity for people to be learning and to help their life change for the better, and to host a load of events. And I think we can hand on heart say that we did all of that. And still there's some more to come. And it's great to have Liv to be able to hand over the reins to support all the community work. But can we think back to those landscape transformations that happened? Well, it seems like an age ago, but actually the first fork in the ground was Christmas 2019. And it was a very momentous occasion when we had our first community voluntary day in the depths of winter in December and also January, where the frost was on the ground. And people came from the community to be able to support the work that we were trying to do, because we were working in those quarters trying to pull up all that snowberry and all those invasive species, which meant that we could then have these beautiful quarters that we're now able to enjoy today. But there have been huge landscape transformations, and it is now a real joy to go and see the sites, but also to understand the various different species that we have. And the volunteers have been really important in being able to understand that, whether that being through their transect training, or whether that be through sitting briefs for various different species of birds within the site, so we can understand what's there and how actually it will transform over the next few years. The joys of nature is that we've made the start now, but probably only 8 years down the line are we really going to see that full transformation, because it's evolving. And if you want any more information on that, do listen to the talk by Emily Parker and John Watkins as they talk about that transformation and how Marble Hill landscape did change so drastically. But it's been great to be able to share with the community some of these landscape transformations, whether that is through a community gardens day or whether that's through archaeology workshops, as you can see here, some of the archaeology that we found, but also being able to bring people into that understanding of the biodiversity, doing things like meadow dipping, or just being able to understand what plants are in that wildflower meadow through wildflower meadow talks. Some are on the YouTube still, in-person talks. But this was quite difficult when we knew that we were just about to start a pandemic that we had no idea about. How do you engage when you're told not to engage? We've been so delighted to have these amazing landscape transformations, and it is so brilliant to see the beautiful interpretation that's now on site, sharing about the bees or about the history. And it's really, really very wonderful to be able to see it now in its full glory. And of course, Marble Hill House was all part of that story, taking away the various different parts of the pictures, as you can see up here, to putting in new skylights, ensuring that everything was meticulously painted and all that paint research was done. And also finding out some of those secrets, so finding some of those previous bits of wallpaper behind those backing boards, and then working with amazing volunteers to be able to bring the collections back. And you can see here one of our volunteers called Maria, who is now part of the English Heritage team. So it just shows how you can go from being a volunteer to then being full-time part of the team. And she's got a permanent job with us as part of the Shout Out Now programme, which works with young people to be able to get them into heritage and understanding our history. And so it's been really wonderful to be able to share about the house through various talks, to be able to hear from those conservation specialists who see their everyday work as kind of just mundane. But for someone like myself who doesn't have a heritage background, being able to offer them an opportunity to talk to the community has been so amazing. I've learned so much by these fantastic people, because the meticulous care of which they have shared has been unbelievable. And it's great to be able to share that interest and also that expertise. So do go on to the Marble Hill YouTube channel and you can see some of those fantastic talks that they've put on. Because of course, in a pandemic where you can't necessarily have lots of people in a room, we had to find a way, and we had to do it digitally. And of course, now we've got the most beautiful cafe. And a lot of the work that was done around the project was actually listening to the community to be able to change what initially was wanting to be done. So many of you will know, who are local like I am, about the previous work that was done to be able to try and make Marble Hill Revived happen. But English Heritage took a step back in 2018, listened to local people and made the changes. And one of those changes was around the Coach House Cafe, making sure that it stayed within the same footprint as it is today. And it is such a lovely space, with the additional area as a great space for weddings or parties. And it's a great opportunity for revenue generation for the team. As of course, with any charity, it takes a lot of money to be able to keep it going. And so it's great to be able to have that income through the cafe. And you can see some local families being our little models for the publicity, because they're our community. But I talked about those improved sports facilities, and we have a great many amount of sports teams who regularly use the site. But we wanted to do something more. We wanted to make sure that we were able to offer accessible sports days, so that it wasn't just able-bodied people being able to play. We also didn't have any female sports teams, but it's great to know that now we have a female cricket team that come regularly. But also we were able to put on football tournaments, cricket tournaments, to encourage all people to come and play. And it's lovely now to have both the girls cricket team and girls football being played regularly at Marble Hill. But also improving those facilities for changing facilities. Yes, we can now have girls and boys, and they are due to be opened for everyone, able-bodied and disabled, to be able to play at Marble Hill. And you can see some pictures of some of our accessible sports days that we've had, and which have given us an opportunity to work with various different partners to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to play sport. And it's a site that resonates today. You've heard me talk a little bit about Henrietta and her story, but part of that was also being able to tell that story to lots of different people. And so we wanted to tell that story through a range of people coming to site. So we've had lots of preschool involvement, and it's been great to offer heritage mornings, to be able to offer carol services in the cafe with some of the kindergarten team on site, but planting trees that will be there as they grow up So they are part of the Marble Hill story too. And it was great to be able to work with our community to add 4 trees as part of the Queen's Canopy, as part of that community involvement. And you can see some of them planting them here with our former head gardener, Kate Slack. But also talking about things like wildflower meadows, ensuring that our young people really understanding about that biodiversity, about what we're trying to do. And so they are part of that story going forward. And we've built that legacy of the Marble Hill Revived project through doing heritage mornings for under 5s. And it's a great opportunity for little people to understand more about Marble Hill, bring their parents, and there's information for parents, which is a little bit more complex, and the phenomenal team at Marble Hill and the volunteers helping support learning about history from a young age. Because let's face it, it's great to be able to start it young so it can continue into the future. But it's not just being the under 5s. We've created schools outreach for Marble Hill, and we did that through discovery visits. And it gave schools an opportunity to be able to come to site, learn about the landscape, be able to draw various different parts of it, and then create a tile with Orleans. We've since changed that offer, but there's still a lovely schools outreach offer. So if you have any schools that would be interested, please do get in touch with the team, because it's a great opportunity for our local schools to hear more about the heritage that they might know or they might not. If they just come here for some sports, it's great to be able to tell them about this strong woman behind the story, and actually how this place and how the 66 acres has evolved, especially things like doing our project around remembrance and armistice. But there's also been that formal discovery visit, but also various different bits of schools' involvement in Marble Hill that has been less part of the formal part of it. So you can see here we were doing our Green Hay Day, and we got the local kids to come and pretend to be cows and cattle as they stomped around, breaking down the seeds so that they could enrich the soil at Marble Hill and enrich those wildflower meadows. But also we did some planting. We also did, I mentioned about our armistice, so working with our youth forum to be able to ensure that they were part of our Revived project too. And you can see some fantastic pictures of Marble Hill in response to the story of Marble Hill and its creation. So it was not just that opportunity to talk to schools informally and formally, but also creating garden events that really inspired and gave people that sense of wonder. You can see there's some talks and tours that are happening around the gardens, and these continue today as part of the project that is happening. We've got some fantastic landscape tour guides, and I would definitely advise coming to hear what they say, because it is absolutely brilliant, and the volunteers are phenomenal. But also giving those opportunities for understanding about bees, understanding about birds, building bird boxes, finding ways to talk about our heritage and our landscape and how they are so intertwined, which was a key factor as part of the Marble Hill Revive project, to ensure that the house was interlinked with the landscape and the landscape interlinked with the house. But also we wanted to create some events to celebrate that sports provision. So you may know that we have regular donation-based yoga every Saturday at 8 a.m. Which anyone can come to, so do pop by. But also sporting events, so Marble Hill Cups, and also a super website where you can book the sports facility for Marble Hill. This previously hadn't been done, but was part of the Marble Hill Revived project to be able to have the funding to make it easier for people to book. So not just supporting the provision and the facilities, but also helping ensure that people were able to see what was available and what was not. But one of the wonderful parts of our project has been the opportunity to change people's lives, and I mentioned that as part of the apprenticeships. So we have offered apprenticeships in horticulture and childcare. We've offered internships and are offering internships in the curatorial department and also Kickstarter roles. It has been amazing to see these young people blossom and flourish, and has been the very important part of this project that will really live, and that is their legacy for their future. And it has been a real privilege to be a part of that. But we also want to build a more diverse audience, whether that be working with people with disabilities, talking about Henrietta's hearing loss, or whether that be working with various different groups to share about Marble Hill, many who had never come to Marble Hill before, whether that's tango in the park or Bollywood, or whether that's working with various different groups from Multicultural Richmond to Tringen Group, to be able to share about Marble Hill and to be able to use the story to inspire and find more knowledge. So you can see the group at the bottom, they've made mandala pebbles inspired by the nature and hearing the story of Marble Hill. And I talked about making Marble Hill more accessible. So working with various different groups who now regularly use the site, from Skylarks to MenCap to Mind, to working with RISE, so the Richmond Inclusive Sports group, to make sure that there are regular opportunities for people with disability to be part of the story. And it's been wonderful to welcome many of them to Marble Hill House now that it's open. And as many of you will know, we've got a lift, which means that Marble Hill is more accessible. The sports facilities are for able-bodied and disabled people. So it is great to be able to share about that, and also share about Henrietta as a woman who had a disability. And often we don't share enough about the wider parts of our people of history. But that's been it's been fantastic to be able to do that. But also we've been building a few local connections through the London Luminaries, which was born out of the fact that we couldn't physically be in a room together. Pope's Grotto and Marble Hill wanted to do a Groves to Grotto joint tour. However, about 2 weeks before that happened, lockdown happened, and we couldn't do the events, and we didn't know how to be able to communicate. And I said to the team, well, why don't we do something like a bit of a Twickenham festival? And out of that was born the first series of the London Luminaries, lectures across Zoom to be able to share. And it's been great to be now on our 4th series, which starts very soon, 5th of October. Do get your tickets. People can see them for free, which is always what we had intended. But people are also able to donate. And across the various series, we've raised over £35,000. And that's split between all the properties that take part. So now we've got 14 properties. And it's great that even in the depths of various different lockdowns, we were able to engage with about 900 people who were joining each of the Zooms to be able to share about the heritage. And many of these places had to shut completely. Marble Hill, thankfully, was able to be open, although the team worked so unbelievably hard to make sure that it was open. And we all had to, across this whole project, work within various different parameters that were all changing, kind of whether that was test and trace, or whether that was the whole events programme that had to be immediately cancelled at one point. So it's been an ever-changing opportunity, but it's been great to build those local connections that have made a difference, like London Luminaries, but also have made a difference to Marble Hill, whether that be through Visit Richmond, through things like Richmond Live and opportunities like the dementia training that we now regularly give, or whether that's through working with various different partners like the Wildmind Project, who are currently bringing people from West Mid to be able to work with their mental health in the grounds at Marble Hill. But we've created a lot of events. We hope that some of you on this call have been part of that, and we hope that, and these will continue, so we hope that you, if you haven't enjoyed them yet, you can come and be part of the story that continues and the legacy of the project. So everything from various tours to various different performances, arts in the park and theatre performances. And it's been great to give opportunities for all of our community to be able to use Marble Hill as a bit of a stage. It's been really, really precious to have those moments where often people felt uneasy about being in a space, but to be able to use the green spaces to help with sharing of culture and arts, but also being able to do things like social prescribing through our regular monthly forest bathing. So being able to use the green spaces as widely as possible to be able to make sure that we support our community in its many different varieties. But I wanted to talk about three major projects that have their resonance in the house and have their resonance today. And these are particular projects that we worked on as part of the Marble Hill Revive project and as part of the National Lottery funding. And the first one was called Being Heard. We worked with a super group called Gobbledygook. You can see them here. And before the pandemic, they came and did a workshop on site, inviting people to listen to the ground and listen to the sounds that would have been heard perhaps by Henrietta, whether that be the birds, the bees, the sound of nature. But sadly, everything had to stop given the pandemic, and we had to find a new way of working. But we were really blessed to be able to use the grounds and work with some fantastic hearing groups to be able to talk about what life would be like if you were 30 and you were losing your hearing, as Henrietta did. So we really wanted to celebrate Henrietta, her disability, but how she overcame it, and yet she let nothing stop her. And so by working with Gobbledygook and a group of deaf musicians and deaf charities, we created a soundscape that sits in Henrietta's bedchamber. And you can hear that whenever you come and visit. And it sits in a hearing horn. So you can lift up the hearing horn and you can hear the beautiful soundscape that they managed to create. And that was based on Lavender's Blue Dilly Dally. And it uses Eloise, who is a deaf musician, a local deaf musician, and she plays her flute and she talks in it. But also we used the hearing charities helped us understand what living with a hearing impairment might be like. So you'll hear the sound come in and out. You'll hear a drum beat. So do go to the house and do have a listen. We also wanted to share about womanhood and also Henrietta's resilience. And as many of you know, and I've alluded to earlier in my talk, Henrietta had an abusive first relationship. At one point, she writes in a letter that she fears for her safety. So we wanted to be able to use that experience to be able to help and inspire other people. And so by working with a fantastic charity called Dose of Nature, we worked with women who had been victims of domestic abuse, or as I would rather call them, survivors of domestic abuse, to be able to offer nature, togetherness, time in green spaces, and also to use that beauty to be able to help recovery, to help find release. And you can see the ladies here throwing leaves into the River Thames to be able to release that anger and that hurt. But they did it through a really creative way, through poetry, through land art, and finding time to be together in nature. And it's a real joy to be part of those ladies' lives, because they regularly come back to Marble Hill. And they planted a tree that they called the Henrietta Tree of Hope. And it's the inscription says, dedicated by a group of extraordinary women, inspired by the remarkable life of Henrietta Howard. Through a deeper connection with the natural world, they shared their own remarkable stories of strength, survival, and above all, hope. Now, we did this project on the 10th of December, when, if you remember, we'd just come out of lockdown and into lockdown and all madness. So it really was a very testing time for these women, and how awful to be locked up essentially with your abuser. So this really meant a huge amount to these women. But we've been very lucky to be able to do this project again with the support of Active Richmond. And it's lovely that there is also now another tree, and they've named their tree Helena, a shimmering tree of hope. And can see the inscription that they have written. They wrote a beautiful poem, all of them together, and do go to the Avenue of Trees. And you can see their tree that means a lot to that group of women. So using Henrietta's story has been really important. And we also created a series of events called Inspiring Women, where we had various different speakers, from Grace Savage, who was the 4-time beatboxing champion of the UK, to Holly Tucker from Not on the High Street and Holly & Co, to be able to talk about their experiences as entrepreneurs. And they shared their stories to inspire other people. And that was fantastic to be a part of. The last resonance project that I'll speak to you about today was called From All Angles. Using the most phenomenal, beautiful staircase that you can see in this picture down here, we talked about the 3 main themes: transatlantic slavery history, the slavery history that is part of the mahogany, craftsmanship because it is so beautiful, and also sustainability because that mahogany has been overforested and now is not available. And we were very lucky to work with a fantastic craftsman called Hugh Wedderburn, who helped the young people to be able to carve and to use the chisels, as you can see up here, to create the most spectacular replication of some of the bosses and of the intricate carving that is in this staircase. And we worked with a fantastic lady called Dr. Caroline Dixon, and she was able to share about the importance of the transatlantic slavery in our economy, but also to share about, through art, how we can tell that story. And Jack, our fantastic horticultural apprentice, who is now a Marble Hill gardener, he was able to teach the young people about sustainability, to talk about the various different ways we've worked to be sustainable, and to plant 2 beautiful cherry trees that they then dedicated to the enslaved Africans who've been part of Marble Hill's history. It was very special to work with some amazing people from Project X, who are part of Achieving for Children. And those young people have had very troubled worlds. None of them were in formal education, and many of them, and they all had some kind of criminal record. And you can see their work whenever you come to Marble Hill. You can see it in the beautiful inlay next to the most fantastic poem by Malika Booker that shares about the mahogany. But it has been a phenomenal privilege to work with the most amazing volunteers. And we started off in 2019 with no volunteers. And now we have, I think, about 250, working with these amazing gardeners who help transform the site, working with events team, working with our research team to be able to ensure that Marble Hill was revived. And it really has been such an unbelievable delight to have these people as part of my world and to watch how their impact has made such a significant change in the life of Marble Hill. And it was great to see Marble Hill House being launched and also to see all those Harris fencing being removed. So now we are open for 5 days a week. And we had quite a few people come to our launch event, and that was so fantastic. We had almost 3,000 people on that first weekend. And that was the amount of people who come to the house on the year before we closed in 2019. So it was quite something to welcome that many people. But it was also lovely to have Shire horses pulling people along the carriageway, and also for our fantastic mayoral team to open the house. But a real legacy of the project is also the Marble Hill Friends. And I would advise anyone to come and be part of the team. Come and be a member, come and share about Marble Hill. I now sit on the committee because as Liv mentioned, I'm now the former audience development manager. And it's great to be able to share about Marble Hill as part of the community, because the community has been the bedrock of why we have done this project and how the project has really, really been so important to our community. But you can come and be a part of a Marble Hill Friends. It's £10 per year. Come and be part of some of the events and share about the beautiful Marble Hill that we are so lucky to have. So it wouldn't be a community talk if I didn't say ways in which you can get involved. And there are a number of different ways that you can do that. Obviously, volunteering is so important to Marble Hill in all volunteer varieties, whether you're a passionate gardener or whether you're a passionate conservator, we will find a job for you to be part of the amazing story. And I know the team are looking for Diwali events people at the moment and supporters in terms of the gardens and the conservation on site. So do get involved. The best way to support English Heritage, who have made such an impact in our community and also on the site, is becoming an EH member. And it's relatively cheap, and it's a great way to not only support Marble Hill, but also support over 400 different sites that English Heritage care for. But also you can have you can become a friend of Marble Hill, and that's a great way to also be involved and to be part of the life of Marble Hill. You can have a cup of coffee, and also there is a regular harvest that comes from the kitchen garden, and the volunteers there are so unbelievably dedicated, and they create the most amazing cucumbers particularly, but also a whole variety of vegetables. So that's every Thursday. But come have a cup of coffee. It's an easy way to be able to give back to the charity that has made this happen. But also get involved in many of the events that Liv and Maureen, who is the phenomenal property manager at Marble Hill, is putting on. The team are wonderful, and it's great that the community are so part of what's happening for Marble Hill's future. It's been so lovely to speak to you all, and I just hope that you can be part of Marble Hill as a part of its future. Thank you.
Wow, what a brilliant talk, Rachel. Thank you for your brilliant presentation and talking about Marble Hill Revived and the community. As someone who also grew up in the area, it's really great to see how Marble Hill has changed over the last few years. So if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat. I have a few events that I will mention briefly that are coming up over the next few months. So we've got a Halloween trail starting next month for the week of Halloween, and there will be some decorations by Mandarin ducklings and pumpkins that have will be carved by the garden volunteers. One of the big events that's coming up is the Diwali workshops and evening parade. And there are going to be some public workshops to create lanterns. So definitely sign up if you want. That will be also on the website. We've got the Marble Hill Remembers exhibition, Armistice commemoration on the 11th of November. And then we're coming into the Christmas events, where we've got Christmas carols with Mandarin ducklings on the 1st and wreath making on the 5th of December and the 28th of November, and then culminating in community carols on the 11th of December. And all information will be on the English Heritage website. So I have some questions for you, Rachel. The first one is, what drew you to the role of Audience Development Manager at Marble Hill?
Well, I think this one's a bit of an easy one for me because, like you, I'm a local person, and although I had no heritage background, I live very locally, and I was very excited about the opportunity of such a huge investment coming to our local park. I remember my father taking me to Marble Hill and talking about some of the history. So as a very personal part of my history, it felt really fabulous to be sort of being part of that. But to be totally honest, it was just so exciting to have this on our doorstep and to be able to give back to the community that had served me and my family so well. But also to be able to, and I could definitely say that every penny was being spent on the community, on opportunities, and we really have, English Heritage have made such an effort to be able to make sure that everything has been really done with utter care for the people who use the site. And I think that's, you know, and I can hand on heart say that has happened, and I can hand on heart say that that's happening as the project continues, because there's some incredible people who are helping make it happen.
Wow, good answer. The second one is, what has been your favourite event or project that you worked on when you were at Marble Hill?
I think it may well be, gosh, it's really difficult. I think the Resonance project really I hold very dear. The Womanhood project has been quite moving, and it's been really so humbling to work with those women who have been through so much, but yet are finding their home at Marble Hill. And they, you know, kind of both groups regularly meet, and for them to know that they have got a support network when they felt so alone has been a real has been really significant in my world. And I loved working with the young people as part of the From All Angles project. But it's been great to see the transition, and it was really moving that one of them was able to write at his court appearance, talk about Marble Hill as he finished his reprobation period, and talk about the importance that the project had had on him. So that was, you know, kind of, there was just a couple of opportunities where heritage has really helped inspire and helped find a new space in someone's life to be able to make change.
One final question. Have you learned any lessons during your time at Marble Hill?
Oh my gosh, Liv, I've learned so much. I've learned so much from the volunteers. Each, you know, kind of, my gosh, we are so blessed by such fantastic people with such varied background who care so much. That's just been phenomenal. So I've learned so much from them. I've also learned so much from the amazing colleagues on site. Kind of, it is a real family. And I feel very blessed to have learned quite a lot from all of you, but also to learn from the historians, to learn from the conservation team, to learn about paint. I never knew about all of these kind of just different parts of what goes in to create a heritage site, and actually the kind of level of expertise it's world class, and to have the opportunity to work with them has been really amazing. Even, you know, kind of been some real highs and there's been some real lows as part of the project, but to be able to ask a question from, you know, a number of different doctors who are leading class in their field has been phenomenal. So I think, yeah, I've learned from you all, and thank you.
Wow, that's some good answers to some questions. Thank you everybody for coming to the final How Marble Hill Was Revived webinar. You'll be able to see these, the past few and this one eventually on YouTube. And I'd just like to say thank you to Rachel and the rest of the Marble Hill team for such a project. So yeah, thank you, and good night all.
Thanks so much, Liv. Bye-bye.
Bye.